This is Maharajas of Scale, a podcast where we go behind the scenes and talk to founders who are demolishing the myths around building and scaling a big business in India. These are the stories that have shattered the assumptions around Indian consumers and are changing the game completely. I am Krishna serial entrepreneur, co-founder of Flit, the fashion locator in town, and startup mentor, bringing you these stories. Hey everyone, this is your host Krishna from Maharajas of Scale. It's sort of a partly cloudy Thursday afternoon in Bangalore. Not really my favorite day. I prefer days to be sunny. But we have an entrepreneur amongst us today who's likely to give all of us a cheerful day or a sunny disposition just by reading the content and the information that she publishes. Today we have amongst us somebody who's bringing out much needed light on the good things that happen around all of us. Our media, practically most human beings that we meet usually peddle negative stuff because it tends to carry itself around faster. But we've never really given the positive stuff a chance. And that is what Anuradha Kedia of the Better India is doing. She's changing what content we read and giving boost to good content. And she's our Maharani of Scale today. It's wonderful to have a Maharani after having so many Maharajas after a long time. Anu, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Krishna. I think that's one of the most wonderful introductions I've heard, relating me to what I do to, bringing sunshine, because I love a sunny day as well. And I never linked it before, but maybe that's one of the reasons I started the Better India. So thank you for that warm welcome, and happy to be on a grandiose platform called the Maharajas of Scale.
Awesome, Anu. So Anu, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're working on right now.
Sure. So Krishna, I founded along with my husband Dhimanth a platform called the Better India back in 2008. What the Better India is today is it's India's largest positivity brand. It's the place where you would find all of the impact related and solutions oriented news that you need to find about the country. As the name suggests, it is the better part of India. And the place where it was born from was essentially an idea back in 2008, where Dhimanth and I were, a recently married couple. We used to, and we were avid consumers of news. And what we felt was, what hit us almost every single day was this lack of a complete spectrum of news. We felt that the news was leaning so heavily on the side of sensationalism and negativity, and highlighting issues and things that were broken, which is no doubt important in a democracy, but at the same time, unless it's well balanced with news and highlighting of things that are working as well in our country, right? Or the regular people who are actually trying to make a difference. We felt it was doing a huge disservice to all of its readers. So it sprang from that notion, that ideology, that we feel that there should be a better balance to what we are learning and what we are reading, and what should news do to you, right? So it was essentially, is there a concept, can we use the power of the internet and social media and everything that was emerging at that point of time to build a community of people who are inspired to do good, all through a medium of storytelling, of highlighting good, of inspiring people and empowering them with tools and information to be able to become change makers in their own right. So this was the thought back in 2008, with which we launched, what was essentially a blog at that point of time, called the Better India, and this was a side project for us for a couple of years, completely bootstrapped, and something that we did over weekends and on work day evenings along with our day jobs. And it was in 2013 that I actually quit my day job and started working on this full time. And in 2015, Dhimanth joined as well as taking it up as a full time enterprise. That's when we raised our first round of funding. And it's just been great going since then.
That is fantastic. In fact, I think what you're working on here is a dream project. Well, even if, at least for me, I see this as a dream project. And I'll tell you, I think 20 years ago, or maybe 22 years ago, The Week, which is published by the House of Malayalam Manorama, which is a news publication. And as any other news publication, a lot of it is about obviously questioning the government and the sensational news. Almost all of them have lost their independence and moral compass these days. And so much so that almost all of it has an agenda behind it. Everything but the people. But what The Week used to do, and I used to be an avid subscriber because occasionally they would bring out good articles and like what you call as art cinema in filmdom, right? Like cinema that should actually be shot because a producer believes that there are no takers for it. And similar to that, Malayalam Manorama believes that there are no takers for good stories. They would save all their good stories for their yearbook. There would be some sort of an annual issue, and one such annual issue actually featured, it's either the late 90s or the early 2000s, the story of a couple who had worked, I think, between towns and villages of Karnataka and Kerala, and together they had revived 34,000 water bodies and lakes, a wide variety of things. I don't remember their name from memory. But they had also created some sort of a self-reliance and a renaissance in agriculture in the communities that they went to. Now, when you read news like that, you feel empowered. You feel that, yes, there is change that is really possible. And when you read the usual news, the feeling that you get is, oh, gee, I have no power. The system is so bigger than me. We've been like this forever. And, there is no way, nobody can change this country, right? That's the feeling we get. So I used to think, why doesn't that become more regular, more mainstream? And then it doesn't need to be a yearbook. It doesn't need to be a cover story. It needs to be much more regular because, for instance, while there are a lot of leaders in American civil rights history, the blacks and the African Americans, most people only talk about Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks. Be that as it may, but Rosa Parks, she became a figure that all the other blacks rallied around her for just one simple action that she did, which is she boarded a bus. If I remember the exact story correctly, she boarded a bus that was meant for whites, or she sat on a bench that was meant for whites in the bus, and she fiercely refused to give up. And the backstory to that was she was already waiting for a couple of times and a couple of hours, and there was no, colored people buses as they were called back then. And it was a simple act of courage. While there were a lot of other people, that fought lot of riots took place, that just simple act of hers was enough to galvanize a community and then to give a lot of impetus to the civil rights movement, right? So I'm a huge fan of what you're doing. I've read your stories for a long time. In fact, in the US, there's one more outlet called Pass It On. I don't know what the exact name of that outlet is, but in huge billboards in every bus, the bus terminal, as we call bus stop, there are always these huge portraits, for example, of Whoopi Goldberg or Benjamin Franklin, all people who punched way above their weight and overcome adversity to create amazing things. So, and after a point in time, I started noticing them in multiple places. And then when I looked up, it is a non-profit and what you're doing is awesome. So, but let's talk about the beginnings a little more. You started this as a blog. And at what point of time did you see interest in these stories? Where did you source the stories from? How did you find out the veracity of these stories? How did you establish the facts? Talk to us about those beginnings a little bit.
Yeah, sure, Krishna. So when we started out, right, it was essentially Dhimanth and I who would go out, in Bangalore on weekends and in evenings to cover people and organizations that we knew were doing good work. So these were genuinely good organizations and people who were engaged in volunteering or just making a difference in some way or the other. And our focus has always been on highlighting those stories that can show people how it's really possible for people with any kind of background and any kind of whatever constraints people have, whatever stage of life they are in, they can still make a difference if they really put their heart and mind to it, right? So because I think the conventional way of thinking in India at least, and I think almost all over the world, has been that there's a time and place for doing good or for thinking about others, and that is usually at the end of your after you're done with your career and all the other all your family, everything that you need to do, all the responsibilities and duties that are fulfilled. After that, you could actually start looking at society. I think even from our scriptures, the way we are taught, right, there are different phases in life. And this is the phase in life, this is kept for the end when people start thinking about others. What we wanted to do is really overturn that entire mindset and create a narrative where people know that, where people can learn about other people who have not really waited for that one point of time in their life. Or after a certain stage where they are very comfortable in life, where their kids are married, where they have amassed enough for fortune and everything to start doing good. So that was one of our main thought process behind covering the kind of people we covered. It was all about small people. It was about regular Joes, regular citizens of India who whether they might be working full time, they might just want to do something over weekends, might just want to help out even their own domestic helpers or whatever it is, right? But the idea is that there are people in this country who are thinking about things and people beyond themselves, and let's highlight their stories. So the way we the amazing part about this was that what started as a side project, just the two of us covering these stories, very soon snowballed into a sort of a movement of positive journalism, where people would read these stories, share it far and wide, and the impact that started happening on the ground was just mind blowing for us. What we thought was, yes, let's inspire people and make them think that they can do something, actually became this whole movement where people started reaching out to the people we covered and asking how they could contribute, how they could donate their time or money or resources and all of these things. And we were regularly bombarded with emails and messages asking us to connect our readers with the protagonists and all of that. So, very soon we started giving out all of those contact details because it was just too much communication for us to handle, at that time. But it was just so heartening to see that there was the kind of interest that there was among people. There was this whole latent need among people that they wanted to help out in so many different ways. They just did not have enough avenues to find the people who needed that kind of help, And the second great revelation that came to us was also the number of people who wanted to join our efforts and help us out in, finding these stories and reaching out and finding the protagonists, giving them, highlighting their work, getting them under the spotlight, amplifying their work, all of that, So it was just incredible. There were people from all walks of life, whether mainstream journalists who started reaching out to us and asking us if we would like to cover some of the stories that they have because their newspapers or magazines did not want to carry them, to people who worked in different fields on the ground, whether they were doctors or lawyers or wildlife conservators conservationists or gender equality activists, and various people who would reach out to us and tell us about the work that they saw around them. So this was incredible. And the kind of network that we created, we had over 500 contributors, reaching out to us and sending us a whole lot of stories of what they saw on the ground. So this helped us cover the entire country within a span of a few years. And these were our eyes and years on the ground, and it was using this network that we were also able to verify and put out stories that were very, very bona fide. So this is what led us to really build this sort of trust and goodwill that we even enjoyed to this day, because the entire process was so organic and built over so many years. The entire network that we have, the entire reader base that we have, everything grew so organically that there's so much of trust and goodwill that we're able to enjoy. And that's why when we cover a story on the Better India, people know that it's very well, it's very well verified and fact-checked and covered with the right intent.
Very interesting. 500 is a very large number for a start. Let's take it even back. When you initially started, so you and Dhimanth set out, how did you source your first few stories? And how did some of these other people discover that you could be a platform to discuss this? And how did you build this, well, let's say a small group of 500 believers, which is certainly large for a start? How did that happen?
No, 500 was not at the start, right? 500 was about 5 to 6 years down the line, right? This was about 2014, 2015 numbers that I'm telling you. When we just started building our own in-house team and started hiring, reporters and editors and everybody in-house. By the time we started doing that, we had this large team, like this whole geographically distributed remote working team is what we can call them now. Working for us, sending us these stories. So it really happened by word of mouth, right? When our stories started getting shared everywhere, and more more started reaching out and saying that this is amazing. I want to be a part of your network, of your efforts. And that's when we were like, some of the people who even till today they are part of this network, who regularly work with us, and one or two have also joined us full time since then. This was all because of the entire word of mouth, sharing of stories and impact that happened right from the beginning. So yeah, it was incredible for us also to see that. It was not by design, but it was definitely something that helped propel us faster.
So how long did it take in that beginning period where you launched a few articles? Maybe the first few you directly sourced, and then you created a network. So were these paid journalists, or were some of them sharing some of these stories sheerly for the love of it?
Yes, so it was really a mix. A lot of the contributors who were sharing their stories were really sharing for the love of it, for the sheer joy of seeing these kind of initiatives see the light of day. Get the kind of spotlight that they were hoping they would get. Via some media outlets. So since there was a complete dearth of such media outlets. Back then, they were really joyful to even see such initiatives being covered and reaching the right audience. Right, our audience is essentially, by virtue of the kind of stories we do, it's essentially the kind of audience that is interested in reading about positive initiatives, about progress, about change, and also helping out in any way that they can. Right, so that's how the entire audience also grew. Today, we have an audience of we reach out to almost 70 million people every month. And this audience is really, I would say, is a kind of filtered audience which is really interested in stories of change and in helping out in all the different ways that they can. So yeah, I think it was. So there were a few, of course, that we even paid because we loved their work, loved the stories. We loved everybody's, but it was only that most of the contributors came on board to just share their stories, even without any sort of expectation of compensation in return.
And at what point did you realize that this had acquired a life of its own and it had outgrown that little idea, that little beautiful idea that the two of you had thought about?
So I think it's been an ever-evolving journey, right? For us, I mean, so I'll, the thing has been that even our ideology, right, the way we think about it, what we always wanted to do, in the space, in the impact space, has been evolving. For us, I mean, a few things have been constant. I think some of the things that were remain constant right from the beginning is the idea of creating a large business in the country which is focused on doing good. We've also wanted to break the myth that businesses cannot be set up for good purposes, and so the myth that is like even today many people believe that we are an NGO. We are not an NGO. We wanted to set up a sustainable business that could run while working on the tenets of building a community, of doing good, of creating impact. Right, so it's an impact business in that sense. And the other thing that is remain constant is that everything we do it for impact. But the way we've been going about impact, right? What essentially started for us, largely impact was defined as social impact. How are we helping people in society who are doing something good, who are helping others and things like that, for the upliftment of the marginalized communities and different areas like that, has evolved to a large extent to become very sustainability focused as well today. We over the years we felt that there was a huge need. I mean, all of the talk around climate change, global warming, all of this had a huge impact on us. And the Better India also evolved into becoming a large sustainability platform. I'd be happy to call it India's largest sustainability focused brand today. And when I say it's more of an umbrella brand, because there are also different business models that have emerged while we were taking stock of the needs of our consumers. So we also have the Better Home now. So the Better has become an umbrella brand with the Better India as the content-focused enterprise, and the Better Home has become eco-friendly home cleaning range of products. So it's essentially a consumer brand that is focused around giving people access to sustainable products, and that's where we're seeing this taking shape, and growing in different ways, where we know that we want to stand for impact and sustainability. And there are so many different avenues and directions for us to grow and evolve, because there is such a huge need, and there's no single brand in India which is focused around, FMCG products which are environment friendly, which are non-toxic, and which cater to people's needs. So yeah, it's been a journey that has been evolving with time.
We'll come back to the Better Home in a little while. We'll definitely cover that. Let's go back to the Better India for a few minutes. So the blog and the start, and today it's like it's a media outlet, right? It's a media outlet that publishes. Today the lines have blurred between blogs and news outlets / media outlets, because a blog that informs readers could be categorized as news as well. But the fundamental difference between blog and news being, at least, is that a blog can be an opinion. Well, a lot of news is opinion too, but for the most part, news should be about the reporting of facts rather than embellishing. So from that perspective, you're reporting facts, you're reporting stories about people that have made a difference, and 70 million is a big number. Is that viewership or traffic from across the world, or is that just India?
Yeah, so that traffic is definitely across the world. So almost I would say around 70% of that is from India. So about 30% we have, traffic coming in largely from the US, UK, Singapore, and Middle East as well, apart from many smaller countries, of course. But yeah, most like 70% of that is from India. In fact, we've had people reach out from the smallest of small countries, like Ethiopia, Pakistan, also, Netherlands, Italy, a lot of countries where people reached out and said that they wanted to set up something like like this, and if we would be able to help them or mentor them, and we have. So it's really been amazing that people reach out that people from all over the world reach out, read the Better India and reach out to us as well. So yeah, I think the appeal is universal. If I was to read a story about a change maker, and that change maker could be anywhere in the world, right? If it's a great idea, if it's a great initiative, it really crosses borders, and that's why I think the appeal is so universal. When we're talking about transformative ideas and initiatives that people take, they're not really confined to our country, though of course we love to read about what's going on in our country. We also feel a great sense of pride about what people are doing, and we feel a sense of involvement. But at the same time, it's amazing to read the same initiatives wherever else they are in the world that they might have been taken up, and also get inspired from them and see if we could emulate them in our own country or our own communities, right? So I think from that perspective, we have audience from across the world.
So businesses and sites that started in 2008 up until 2012-13, the social channels or the social networks, Twitter, Facebook, et al., they had organic reach because right now organic reach is practically dead because that's how they've changed their platforms. Obviously, they needed to monetize. How did that growth come by in terms of viewership, readership? Did you do anything specific? Did you do any growth experiments, or has it always been it is great content? Because usually we like to oversimplify things because that's how human brain stays at peace. We say, okay, we started, we created great content, and then we did word of mouth, we grew. But when you actually start peeling the onion, so to speak, you realize that all growth stories have a lot of effort behind them. There was some sort of a method to the madness. And what sort of things did you do to grow your readership, viewership?
I think, I don't think anyone can survive without being experimental. I think for instance, we have definitely coded experimenting and trying out new things into our DNA now. So, especially in the digital media world, you really can't just depend on, good content pulling in people, right? I think that is a no-brainer. That's the first basic check box that you have to tick off. But at the same time, unless you are innovative and unless you are trying out new things, you're going to become obsolete very soon. So we were definitely on to trying a lot of new things. We were very, very experimental. We've always been that, and we continue to do so. I think we were also very, very early movers on a lot of fronts. When for instance, when Facebook opened up videos, we were one of the first platforms to start putting out videos, and we saw huge traction on that front. So whatever it is that is, and we use technology a lot to our advantage, right? So I think that's again been since Dhimanth is also a computer science engineer and a techie at heart. So it's really been a huge advantage for us to be ahead of the curve in that sense and be able to use a lot of tech to be able to analyze how we're doing, to be able to push out new products. We're very product based as well, So how do we create impact in better, newer and better ways? How do we cover our stories in better ways? New formats that we could try out. So I think every startup has to have that as part of their DNA, innovating and experimenting. And thankfully, we have been a company that has always believed in that.
Can you talk a little about go a little deeper and talk about the experiments? Describe a few that you tried and pick out a few that succeeded and a few that didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, so for us, it's like I said, it's not even we never wanted to set up a media company as such, right? For us, it was always about impact, and what we set up was an impact platform. So the idea was always how do we increase or improve the kind of impact that we're doing? How do we reach out to more people and get them more involved in various activities where they can participate? Some of the early experiments were and have been continuing around improving the entire experience for our readers, and how they can come in through our stories and do so much more with the platform, right? Whether it's a lot of impact campaigns that we take up in-house as well. We reach out, we partner with a lot of on-ground organizations, and we've brought water and electricity to villages. We have built toilets and made places go open defecation free. We've funded slum schools. We've influenced policy. So there have been a lot of impact campaigns that we've taken up in-house, as well as partnered with so many other organizations out there. So in order to amplify that impact, there have been various ways in which we try to do that by effectively crowdfunding and getting people to come onto our platform and donate to various causes, with which we saw great traction, back in 2016-17 as well. We continue to do that for a while, and even now we have in-house impact projects, right? So it was really about how do we innovate on different products. We also we were one of the first, I would say the first media company in the country who built their own WhatsApp platform. At a time when WhatsApp did not give out APIs, did not have APIs for business, and it was not possible to have more than 256 people in one group. We had a WhatsApp group of, we were reaching out to over 70,000 people on WhatsApp within just a couple of weeks. So, there were so many experimentations on tech that we took up in-house and that we followed through. It was, it's been a great journey of experimentations.
What are the ones that you thought would work but really didn't succeed, the experiments?
Yeah, so interesting question, because what I was really, really very keen on and very optimistic about was really a marketplace model, because we saw from the stories that we would run, we saw a lot of people would be very interested to buy the kind of products we were talking about, whether they were products made by marginalized communities, whether they were products made by small enterprises, and products that help people live a more sustainable lifestyle, and all of these things. So back in 2018, we started working on launching a marketplace model, on building a platform for small enterprises and NGOs and all of these people to come on board, and be able to sell their products to our readers. So that was something that we were very gung-ho about. We launched something called the Better India Shop, which was eventually called Carnival.com, and we also were very successful at getting a lot of great enterprises on board, and we had listed over 10,000 products as well. So it was incredible traction that we saw, and we were able to get all of these amazing, actually it was a very well curated website platform that we had of products that were meaningful and utilitarian to people. What we didn't anticipate were a couple of issues, right? One was on the supply side itself, where we had some amazing enterprises, and they were all small enterprises, but because they were so small, a lot of times they could not really keep up with the demand, and there your customer experience would sometimes not be all that great, because the customer has ordered and has been waiting for a while for their products to ship, or that they are not able to. So we were not able to control a lot of things through the supply chain because of these issues, right? So what did not really work out there actually led to great learnings for us in terms of what we should be doing next. And what we should do next is what essentially led to the birth of the Better Home, because we realized that there is a huge demand for products which are sustainable, which are eco-friendly, which help people move towards a more conscious lifestyle. But at the same time, the supply chain is very fragmented and very broken, and we need to have better control over this supply chain, and that's what led to us actually thinking about this whole process of launching our own brand, of products, because we were like, at least, I mean, we're working with a lot of the same social enterprise, I mean, small enterprises that we were working with in Carnival. But here there's much bigger, much better predictability for those enterprises, much better control on the entire experience for the customer, and a brand that they can trust as well. So yeah, there have definitely been ideas that didn't work, but that have led to even better ideas for us, I would say. I think that's what normally happens, right?
I suppose what doesn't kill you only makes you stronger.
Yeah, exactly. Well said.
Interesting. So the marketplace model, in fact, you wanting to have a better experience for the customer, I'll ask you to peel that a little more. Last couple of months, obviously, given the COVID pandemic, and which I will also address to see what sort of impact you're seeing from COVID, we've ordered a few house supplies because we are all stuck at home and then trying to take care of home. Everything that you order, and it has been, we usually prefer Amazon for all the things that Amazon offers. And we've lived in the US, we live here now. We've had an opportunity to compare. In the US, it's a joy, when a package shows up, inside that is something beautifully packaged. In India, it's anything but, to be honest with you. The last 10-20 items that have come from Amazon, they are so poorly packaged, and there is no joy in shopping at all. You don't feel like, the item inside it might be nice looking or maybe not because it's so poorly packaged. But unless and until it happens to be an Amazon original packaging, that joy is not there. So even with Amazon Prime products, that kind of quality control doesn't exist. I think that is some of the risks that you end up taking in a marketplace model, although it doesn't work exactly that way in the US. I'm not surprised that you moved to a more controlled marketplace or a calibrated marketplace kind of a model where you have a much more greater say in the quality. You possibly have much more greater say in all the, the messaging. So therefore, the consumer has a much better experience. So I'm not at all surprised you went that route. So, but let's talk about that suboptimal experience. When you say they did not have a great experience, was it the quality of the product? Was it the packaging? Was it the outcomes? What was it?
It's a mix, right? So I think it's a good point you brought out about Amazon packaging, right? Especially when it comes to you and you're so disappointed in so many ways. For me, the greatest disappointment used to be the amount of bubble wrap that even the most mundane products which couldn't break even if you threw them from 10 feet came wrapped in, right? The amount of sometimes there was so much thermocol, there was just so much unnecessary secondary packaging, and that was a huge pain point for me personally. And one of the reasons for launching the marketplace was essentially that we will at least be able to let's really cut down that kind of unnecessary packaging that's going and filling our landfills, So on that front, there were so many, one part was definitely the inability to meet demand cycles, right? Sometimes like the kind of partners, what we call partners, who are like our vendors and sellers on the platform that we worked with were, so small, and that was really our USP and where we really wanted to work, right? We wanted to uplift the small marginalized, entrepreneur or artisan, and that is why we actually went out and found, over 1,000 of such people and listed them. We had over 10,000 products listed as well on the marketplace. But on the flip side, the issue was also that there were so many different things that could hit them, and there were so many different places that they would have to go out and sell, for instance, in exhibitions, or it could also be very seasonal. They might have higher demand coming during some festivals and things like that, or they might run out of stocks as soon as we see huge demand coming. Of course, we had a great content to commerce sort of a model, so we would cover these cover stories of these enterprises or artisans, and we would see a huge surge in demand, right? And many a times they would not be able to keep up with that demand. So we really tried hard to control the experience control the packaging and everything as well. So we actually started shipping out our own boxes and our own, paper tapes and all of these kind of packaging to the partners, so they can use that instead of using bubble wrap and the plastic tapes and all of that stuff. We educated the partners on more eco-friendly ways of packaging, right? What are the alternatives that they could use to bubble wraps and thermocol and all of these things. So we took up a lot of these initiatives, and we saw a great response from the partners. But at the same time, it's very challenging to keep this up as you scale up, and there'll be a lot of partners who are not able to keep up with that and will fall behind. So yeah, that's when it was difficult to keep up the customer experience and our promise to our customers.
That's great. I'm actually amazed at the sensitivity you have to be able to fulfill that demand, to be able to keep up some of the promises that you make or you were making. But let's change tracks and talk about COVID. We are recording this episode in the times of coronavirus pandemic, arguably one of the greatest recent, I would say, invasive events in human history. But it does have an upside for you. It has a silver lining. What sort of stories are you seeing? What sort of growth are you seeing? How is COVID changing the Better India?
COVID is not drastically changing the Better India, apart from helping us discover a lot of COVID soldiers, COVID people who've been helping others during these times. And there've been such amazing, heartwarming stories that have been coming out. And we in fact launched a campaign to recognize and reward such heroes. We have a 12-week campaign where we are awarding 1 lakh rupees to a COVID soldier every week. We have a jury who's picking out, these COVID soldiers, as we call them. So it's been amazing to see the kind of humanity we've seen around us, the kind of fantastic stories. And I think in general, the consumption of content has definitely gone up, right? Because there's so much, more time when people are working from home and all of that stuff. And of course, I think what we really saw, interestingly, was the whole connection of coronavirus with positive news, because there was just so much anxiety that was building up during these times with the kind of news that were being flashed across all of our TV screens and mobile screens and everywhere. There was just so many mental health issues that were cropping up, that we got a lot of response from people saying the Better India is really what has become essential reading for them. In fact, somebody did write to us and say that in these times, if the Better India should be made an essential service. So it is so true, because I think it's extremely important to know that there are good things happening, that there are people who are taking charge, who are trying to find out, to find cures and vaccines. There's a lot of positivity in the world, right? And really things are not as bad as we start to think, especially when we are living in our silos and we are locked up in our homes. Our social lives have come down to a minimum. A lot of things might play on our mind, and getting access to such news has been a lifesaver for a lot of people. So that's the kind of response we've seen. We've seen our numbers shoot up tremendously during this time. Our English reach almost, went up by more than 50%. But more interestingly, our Hindi reach almost tripled. So it was the Better India Hindi which actually saw a major spike during this time, with more and more people discovering it and becoming regular readers. We also have, so it's just been, I think in that sense, it's been very important. And from the Better Home perspective also, while we launched the Better Home in February, it was really sad that we were hit by a lockdown within just a few weeks. So we had to shut down we stopped taking orders for a couple of months, and then we relaunched in May. And since then, we're seeing the revenues double month on month. And that's again due to the entire focus around health and hygiene, and especially around products that compromise our immunity, right? I think there's so much more awareness. So, you have your regular chemical-based products products which might kill everything around us, which are great for disinfecting, but they also compromise our immunity in the long run. And that kind of awareness, I think, is what has really propelled these products to take off, especially during the COVID times. So yeah, it's been positive all around in that sense.
Yeah, I still remember when I think early February or towards the third week of February is when the Indian media started focusing on COVID, and practically every positive case, not even a death, every positive case was breaking news. And a lot of people don't know it. That's one of the other reasons why we need, intuitively, human beings know that there's good stuff happening out there. Yes, I don't think there are blatant deniers of the COVID pandemic, but then again, for instance, if we see the number of kids, not even adults, kids who died in 2017 from tuberculosis, that is 127,000, and COVID numbers are nowhere near that, in spite of it. And there's so much information out there to show that one crisis after another has been amplified, and as a result of which some real issues have suffered. So the issue of tuberculosis became hostage to the hype that was created around the AIDS pandemic. And the funny thing is, life and everything around it is really an amalgam, isn't it? It is not really one issue. There was this chief economic advisor or chief economist of Goldman Sachs who very early on, when this was still unfolding in Wuhan, said, thank God something of this sort did not happen in India. And the presumption in there was that India was somehow a place where nothing of this sort could be managed. And we've seen these apocalyptic predictions for a long time. But if we go back and reread our history, and especially the ones that have been selectively hidden and deliberately hidden from us, we see so many examples. For example, in the 4th century AD, while during the heydays of the Gupta Empire or the Golden Period, there used to be a book about the man about town, and what should he do for fun on a Friday evening? What sort of fun should he have? All of these mean that it is an evolved country and a civilization, but we seem to have forgotten that part. So I'm not surprised that during COVID, people did believe that there was a lot of hype around it. There is some amount of fear that definitely needs to be infused in people, because people definitely need to be cautious. But a lot of the mental health issues that alluded to has been completely forgotten, because by design, human beings are gregarious. We are, people that believe in freedom. And therefore, just locking ourselves up, what we should possibly have had is a calibrated understanding. Yes, this disease has affected people at random. Tanya, our executive producer, has seen someone close to her being affected. My own uncles, who are all in their mid-50s, are right now recovering in the hospital, and it looks like they'll be out tomorrow or the day after. It is real, but at the same time, I think people's courage and valor could have been marshaled a lot better. And I suppose you're the antidote, for a lot of the negativity we see out there. So let's quickly cover the 70 million, how you got to 70 million, some inflection points. What were some of the initial things that, let's say, a coverage in some other news magazine, or maybe endorsement by some celebrity? I'm just giving you some examples of maybe some inflection points. Talk to us from 2008 to 2013, wasn't it, when you raised funding?
2015.
Yeah. So 2008 to 2015. And then how were the numbers then? And then 2015 to now, what were all the inflection points that has brought you to 70 million?
Yeah, so I think there's nothing that has stood out as such as a major boost to the numbers as such. But there are, what I would say is that it's been very organic and incremental over the years. I think what helped was really, where we saw numbers increasing was as we kept increasing our content. from the beginning where we used to probably publish one story a week to starting to publish, more regularly, to publishing daily, to maybe publishing 2 articles a day when we hired someone, things like that. So that was what really, really took up the numbers. And I think the other thing was around really a decision that we made quite early, maybe around 2014 or 15, that we didn't really want to believe in this metric of getting people to our website. We felt that it was a pretty outdated metric about how many people come to read your content on your own site. And what we really wanted to be was socially distributed platform. So we did not really care if people just came to our website to read our stories, but we wanted the stories to reach where people were, because we felt intuitively that it doesn't make sense. Like if I'm on Facebook or if I'm on Twitter, I should be able to read those stories on wherever I am browsing, rather than having to click and come to a particular site to be able to read the stories. It was also a very conscious decision because these were stories of impact, right? And these were stories that intended to amplify the impact that was happening as well. And we wouldn't really be achieving that purpose if we kept insisting that people come to our website alone to consume that content, to learn about these stories, to learn about these people, and to do something for them. So that is the reason why we really took this conscious decision to go to take our content wherever people are. And that's the reason why we are we have a huge community on Facebook, on Twitter. We reach out to over 600,000 people on Twitter. We reach out to over 2 million people on Facebook. Instagram is again a growing community for us, and so many different places that people can just find our content, read about the stories, read about the initiatives, the ideas, and move on, do something with that rather than just click and come to our website. So that really helped propel our growth as well.
Okay, and any particular platform, there is a tendency amongst us humans to search for that silver bullet, that one thing or those two things. And what you are alluding to is like what we see reality happen. But amongst them, were there some things that you thought that sort of acted as catalysts or galvanized the entire growth in readership?
So yeah, again, you're looking at silver bullet. Not exactly, but another thing actually that I can think of that has really helped us grow is languages, right? When we started expanding into regional languages, again, we were able to tap into this whole new audiences that was hungry for such news but did not have access to them in the kind of publications they were consuming. So that opened up an entirely new audience for us. And if you look at small boosts, I mean, there was the time that Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi also spoke about the Better India on his Mann Ki Baat. I'm sure we definitely saw some sort of, some amount of traction there, like people discovering it for the first time. He said that it was essential reading for him. He made sure that he read it at least once a day to find out what's happening in India, what good things are happening in India. So these kind of things are definitely a boost. But I would say for us, we've never had too much of an external influence on our increase or whatever growth numbers. It's largely been a function of the kind of stories that we cover, the kind of audiences we reach out to, and how do we continuously keep expanding and growing that audiences, whether we reach out to different kinds of audiences, right? In fact, very interestingly, even the demographics, if we look into it, it's like 50-50, gender parity. So we have almost 50% men and women readers, and it's just all about reaching out to different kind of demographics, whether it's the elderly, whether it's young kids, whether it's school-going students. It's our content. Basically, we put out a lot of content that appeals to different age groups and different people with different interests in life. That really helps us grow.
I loved what you said about taking your content where people are, and you said it so simply, or in such a simple manner, but it's profoundly impactful, and I couldn't agree more with you. And I'll tell you why. In the year 2011, I was co-founder of a startup called Mango Mobile TV, which is very similar to what Amazon Prime and Netflix are today. And the funny thing is, our tech partner was a partner who had their own set-top box. It's a term that we are not very widely familiar in India because we only have either Tata Sky or Airtel VC set-top boxes. But in the US, there are set-top boxes for a variety of things. For example, the Fire Stick or the Chromecast, which are actually set-top boxes that have grown. One of the things that Netflix did very, very early on, and they've done so superbly and continue to do it, is to really have Netflix out there wherever users are, wherever users were. And the funny thing is, the set-top boxes, for instance, would be you could walk into an electronics retailer like Best Buy, and even today you're likely to see 20-30 set-top boxes. Although the numbers have come down because of the advent of Amazon Fire Stick and then the Chromecast, but at one point in time you could walk in and then you could see cheap Chinese knockoffs. You could see Sony build one, Western Digital build one. You would see all sorts of them. And the funny thing was, no matter what box you bought, Netflix used to be there on every single one of them. So today their viewership runs into the hundreds of millions. Back then, their DVD or the mail order DVD business was much, much bigger than their streaming business. In fact, in 2009, 2010, around the time I started Mango, they only had 2 hours of content that you could watch because their whole content library was limited. And today they have thousands and thousands of films. And then, but in contrast, we had close to 10,000 films, which were and videos. And at that point in time, and perhaps even today, is the largest library of content. And we had such resistance internally to, yes, we were a little short on resources, but see, startups are, startup is another name for punching above your weight in being more resourceful, right? So even if in that, let's say their viewers were 1 million, or rather number of customers were 1 million, in that, even if there were 5,000 customers that had an obscure brand set-top box, they had created a Netflix app and then they were out there. So they were so good, and distribution is in many ways, for example, with films and most product, distribution is the king. Distribution can make even an average product successful, right? So I'm with you on that.
Yeah, however good your product is, I think distribution is one of the most underrated things that people focus on. I think it's very, very important to focus on that in addition to building a great product.
Right. Yeah, I think that's what you mentioned, and I think intuitively you sort of figured out that you have to go, where the people were. That's awesome. So I thought I could contrast this better so listeners could understand this. I have a different question. We all harbor passions in our heart, right, to do good. And like you early on alluded, some of us think, hey, we have to reach a certain point in life to, start doing some of the things from an impact perspective. But as John Lennon says, life is what happens to you when you're busy planning other things or doing other things. This is something that you have to make happen. But yet at the same time, it's one thing to dream of a passion like this and for that to become your full-time thing, right? So you and Dhimanth started this, and there is bound to be this degree of discomfort. I don't know if you had it. You possibly stepped right in when Better India took off, and then you realized that it was no longer this nice little thing, but it had become much larger, and now from a passion it was likely to be something full-time, or maybe even was something that was going to define the rest of your lives. How did you receive that, and did you ever have that feeling, or you have that feeling today, or what did you do with that?
Oh, absolutely, right? Like, we would have never imagined that we would reach out to 70 million people in India. Like, we didn't even know there were so many readers in India, right, when we started. So it's definitely been a much larger than life sort of an undertaking for us. What really started out as something we felt, we started out of passion, and we felt, yes, these are the stories that we just want to be told. We want them to have a life and be able to generate impact, is now a force that is able to, influence policies, is able to inspire people, create awareness, create habit change, create a mindset change the whole narrative, in fact. And what we've seen since we started is, what was, there was not a single publication that would cover such news, to now, like, almost every publication in India has a positive news section, of some sort or the other. So it's really changed the entire media landscape and narrative in a lot of ways. And it's like you said, sometimes it's all consuming, right? Not something that we knew would be happening when we started as a side project. And it's definitely a huge undertaking for us. We sometimes do wonder, where we started and where we are today. But at the same time, I think because it's been in the impact space, and because we've been able to see the impact taking shape in front of our eyes, right? A lot of times, like with stories, you're not able to exactly see what's happening, but a lot of the times, like the campaigns that we've taken up and all the protagonists who reach out to us, on a daily basis, we get so many emails from people thanking us for giving them that voice, for amplifying their work, for getting them, and from so many others, thanking us for the ideas and inspiring them. It's really been an incredible journey. So I think the impact is what has really kept us going, and I think that really keeps us excited all along. Whether it's the Better Home product, whether it's the Better India stories, everything is impactful and meaningful. So I mean, for us, it's so important to even measure the impact, because it's such a huge motivating factor for us, right? We do get back to our protagonists, check with them, how they're doing, what happened after that. That impact is something incredible for our entire team, not just for us, right? Even with the Better Home products, it's just been 3 months since we launched, and we've already shipped out 65,000 bottles, and we've saved that many bottles from going to landfills, because they are all reusable bottles. It's just, and we've actually saved 50 million liters of contaminated water from entering our oceans as well. So everything that we do has that, the angle of impact, and that's really something. We obviously have days of highs and lows, but this is what really, helps bring us up again. We're so thankful for the opportunity to have been able to do this.
Have you ever been overwhelmed? I know positively it has been overwhelming in terms of the growth you've had, but have you ever had, what I started part-time, now I have to do full-time? Have you ever had that feeling?
I'll be lying if I say no, right? No, definitely yes. I think that happens to every entrepreneur, and we have been doing this for 12 years now. So definitely gets overwhelming sometimes. And, we were both, actually, we don't even come from the media background. We were both engineers, happily, in our engineering sort of jobs. After that, we actually met at the Indian School of Business while we were doing our MBA, and going about our business. And now we find ourselves, in a media setup, which was completely new for us, right? When we started out, and all of the years that we discovered things for ourselves, we tried to set up so many different things and build such an organization for start from scratch. It's so many times you find yourselves out of your depth, right? And it's definitely that sense of being overwhelmed at times. But yeah, I think an entrepreneur has to really figure things out and keep going and find new challenges to keep the journey exciting at all times. And I think that's what we've really managed to do. And like I said, the impact keeps us going. I think what also helped us in some sense was, while it was very challenging to enter domains like media and FMCG and all of this, where we have absolutely no experience or educational background or anything of that sort, it also helps us to reimagine the entire sector. I think if I had gone to a journalism college, or I had some sort of exposure to this before I started the Better India, I might have I might have done things more conventionally. So I think what really helped us, probably set up an entirely new paradigm, was because we had zero exposure and we had to really build things right from scratch. Just imagine everything on our own, and say that this is the kind of organization I want to build, and then go about and build it, set up our own norms, our own rules, and our own value systems. So I think that's been a very, very interesting challenge for us.
I'm glad you were honest with this question. I think in the year 2006, when my wife and we were married for a little more than a couple of years, and we got suckered into one of those network marketing things because one of our best friends were a part of it. And for me, the wake-up call was we were moonlighting in it, and one day one of the leaders, the ones that had achieved some milestones, made a passing comment saying, for you guys, this is a career because this is exactly what you're going to be doing. And that hit me like a ton of bricks at that very moment, saying, oh gee, is this going to be our career? And then I started imagining, okay, if this was going to be my future and our career, did I really want it? And then I realized that I didn't want it. And the way a lot of people in it approach it is there are some things you need to do in the beginning, and then the phase is over. With a lot of things, or practically all things, all of them are journeys, and there is very rarely a destination, right? So I can imagine the thought process that would have gone through your mind. And let's touch upon the husband and wife founder relationship. How is it? It's either Eden of roses or a highway to hell, because you could still have a great relationship, but working together in an enterprise with responsibilities is not exactly a bed of roses, right? How has that been?
Yeah, something we get asked a lot, Krishna, to be honest. Okay, so it's I'm sure, like, I've heard so many people ask me this. And I think I have such a boring answer for them, because it's really not been a thorny journey for us in that sense. I think what really worked for us is that we really complemented each other in our skill sets and the kind of responsibilities that we wanted to take up. And I think that's what has really, it prevents us from really stepping on each other's shoes or something like that might happen, between a working couple. But I think there's always been this sense of, a shared purpose and understanding between us. This, like I said, this is not a regular enterprise, right? It's not a business, just for-profit business set up for maximizing profit in that sense. But it was always it had a purpose and passion behind it. And I think that just made our bond that much stronger, so it really helped us deal with a lot of things together, keep ourselves motivated, and also, find out a lot of things about each other in the process. So surprisingly enough, it's been a journey that has brought us closer rather than tear us apart. And I think, like I said, the main reason is because, we've been able to understand where each other's boundaries are, and what kind of responsibilities each one of us takes up. And be able to just candidly discuss everything, without the fear of being judged or without the fear of failing. I don't know what it is exactly. I can't really pinpoint that, but for us it's been just a remarkable journey. I think the only flip side of working with your partner is that you end up talking about what you're doing all the time, and that happens all the time at our home as well. So there's no point where you really switch off, so it becomes sort of all consuming in that way. And I think that's definitely one of the flip sides of working with your partner that I can think of.
Who's the more grounded, balanced one amongst the two of you?
I'm sure you know the answer, Krishna. It has to be me.
Well, then in that case, I guess.
Since Dhimanth is not here to counter that, so I can safely get away with it.
Well, I used to hear I used to hear someone say, as a lady of the house, are you a thermostat or a thermometer? Meaning, do you go up and down with the temperature of the spouse, or are you the one who knows how to keep the temperature in check? So I suppose I'll take it that you are the thermostat between the two of you.
No, I think it's Dhimanth. I think I'm definitely more temperamental, and he's definitely the more grounded, reasonable one. So, in all honesty, I have to admit that.
Well, you just gave away the reason for the success. So awesome. Okay, obviously you're a platform of so many stories, thousands. What have been 2 or 3 stories that have really stayed with you? Practically something that has touched you, and that you continue to sort of go back in and say, okay, this happened, this person. What are some of those?
Oh, there are so many, right? Over the years, I think we've covered over 10,000 stories, and so many stay with me. I think I'll touch upon some of the earliest ones, right? That really had an impact. For instance, there was a story of a remarkable woman that we covered. I think she's been heavily covered since then, but she was very less known when we covered her. She's gone on to win several awards, I think, including the Padmasheree and things like that. But her name was Sindhutais, and she was a person who was, a lady who was abandoned, right from birth. Like some people, they just don't get any break. She was one of them. I think she was abandoned at birth. She married somebody, and that was a terrible marriage, very, very abusive. And her husband left her when she was pregnant, in her 8th or 9th month of pregnancy. She gave birth and raised her kids on her own, trying to, make a living somehow on the streets. And in spite of that, she ended up not just raising her own kid, but also raising several other kids. I think about 25, 30 or more kids from the railway platforms and all of these places that she would find them. And she had over, she had hundreds of grandkids after everything. She raised them by begging on the streets and being able to support them somehow, being able to manage everything. So it's stories like those in the initial days that really kept us, that amazed us at one end, and on the other end, they just made us feel very strongly about continuing to run this platform, because when we covered her story, there were hundreds of people who reached out to us and said they wanted to help her out, that they wanted to do something for her and all of that. Actually, I very underplayed the number of orphans that she helped. She helped 1,400 orphans in her lifetime till the time we covered her. And these were all kids that she would find, abandoned here and there, and all through her measly whatever she earned by begging on the streets. It was these kind of stories. There was another story that we covered about a photography club for the blind. It was such an amazing concept when we heard of it, and we were like, yeah, this is something that, we should totally talk about. Maybe they'll get a lot of support. Maybe more people will come to know about it. Maybe some visually impaired person will benefit from the story. Way back, when we had like a few hundred readers or so. And the beautiful part of it was, within a few days of our covering the story, we did hear back from a visually impaired girl who said that this is exactly what she was waiting for her entire life to find out. She felt very passionately about photography, and she was not able to find any sort of outlet for that. So it was these were some of the earliest stories that we covered, but they were the stories that really gave us that conviction that this is something so important. These are the kind of stories that people need to read and learn about and go out and do something with them, So these are just 2 of the hundreds of stories I can narrate to you if you have all day.
Yeah, well, these are really heart-touching stories. There's no doubt about it. It is the story that perhaps doesn't fit the Slumdog Millionaire narrative, right? because it's Slumdog Millionaire has kids and begging and orphans on the street, but it has anything but the kind that you would read about something like Sindhutais story. Now that you mention it, I think I have read that story. Incredible. I was in my research for this, I was looking at one story that I think you carried maybe some time ago, about a week ago. This was about a lady called Sucheta Dalal who exposed the Harshad Mehta scam. Within journalism, there is a dictum called follow the money, right? And I think recently, I don't know which web series or movie it was, when you follow events, you don't really put things together, or rather you just uncover a few things. But when you follow the money, you uncover a whole lot of different things. Is something, I think that's how the saying goes. And she possibly did that. I know you don't yet do it. Someday, I hope the Better India will do, or something does investigative journalism, follows the money, and sort of brings about the political change that we badly need. Demonetization is perhaps the most grandest follow the money experiment across the world, because I know that the intelligence that was gathered from it did give the government, not that the government didn't already know, but it possibly confirmed a vast amount of their suspicions about how money was flowing in and out of the system. But we haven't yet seen that put to use, or maybe it's a 2-decade plan to put that to use. But be that as it may, investigative journalism is yet to find mainstream application in India. I hope that changes. And Modi, you talked about Modi, reading the Better India. I'm not surprised. When Sardar Patel was a freedom leader, fighter, he used to read, from what I read in the book Freedom at Midnight, he would wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning, and between 4 a.m. and 8 a.m. in the morning, he would read 44 newspapers from across the country to get a sense of what was going on in various states and provinces of India. And no wonder, what he did. He did what he did. So that's fabulous. Anu, it has been a terrific discussing your story. And let's talk maybe before we wrap up about the better home. It's an interesting foray. I can understand the whole landfill and I can understand even what COVID is doing in terms of immunity and all of that. But this is a really extremely crowded segment. Just wearing a strategy hat here for a second, I would have expected that, given a lot of impact stories, I personally believe a lot of impact should be entrepreneurial in nature. Because 2.5 decades ago, when I was very active in the Rotary, we had Madhu Dandavate, I think, who was then finance minister or had some economic position in the economics departments of the Indian government, in the IK Gujarat government. And he very touchingly spoke about all the welfare schemes that the government had done. But the unfortunate part has been that welfare only goes that far. It is about wealth creation. We badly need wealth creation. And a lot of your impact stories I see are about entrepreneurs making different devices. 15 years ago, I invested in a company or a sort of a social enterprise called Rural Innovations, which was touring all the hinterland to find out new innovations and actually commercializing them. I thought maybe that would have been a better outlet where you could easily blend what you're doing with the Better India and bring light to that. So the choice of the better home is a little intriguing from a strategy perspective. Can you throw some light on that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Krishna, the demand has, the choice has been made by our readers more than us. We have over the years tried so many different ways of engaging with our readers, right? Engage their response to various possibilities. Like crowdfunding, like different ways of creating impact. And what we saw was really a gap in the whole sustainable product space, where what we saw from our readers was that there was such a need and such a desire to lead a more sustainable life. People were becoming more aware about the damage to the environment, about everything that we hear about climate change and global warming, and people wanted to make a shift And that's what we saw through our marketplace model also. The products that we were listing, which were sustainable, which people wanted to adopt for a more eco-friendly lifestyle, were flying off the shelf. Actually, the marketplace model was a great teacher for us. It helped us mine so much data on what people really want. There's so much talk about different things, but eventually it's only from that data can you understand, from solid data, that you can understand what people are really interested in. So that really showed us the path that sustainable products, and especially everyday use kind of sustainable products, which are utilitarian, which people need in high frequency, which people use in their homes, was a huge gap that was lacking in the market. There were so many products and brands that were on the hinges and call themselves natural, organic, and all of that, but they were really not solving the problem of being biodegradable, of using plant-based ingredients, and all of those things. So that was a need that we actually captured through the marketplace model. And like I said, sometimes your failures are your biggest success, whatever. They help you with the turnaround the most. And our marketplace carnival really did that for us. It gave us immense and invaluable data on what kind of areas we should get into and what kind of products are the audience is really looking for. And since we had a huge base of the audience through the Better India and the Better, through Carnival as well, we were able to actually get a lot of this data that was real and leading in a lot of ways.
I find it fascinating that this is where it led you. Amazing. So before I ask you for your closing comments, if I were to ask, let's say, if you were to describe the Better India using two things. One is in terms of numbers, stories. We've already discussed the number of readers, stories, and the ones that are popular, and something that would be different from what others would believe. So for instance, on LinkedIn, at least while I'm not very active on these social channels, what I usually find is of late it has become the stories that I see are, okay, somebody takes a picture of somebody on the street, and then, okay, this person did this. We don't know if that story has been verified or not. So what are your popular categories, and what are the ones that are surprisingly popular categories and things that may not be, that people might believe and actually in reality be totally different?
For us, the most popular categories are around, sustainability and sustainable living. So right from our stories around organic farming to people making a shift towards being more responsible in their consumption, to adopting home gardening practices and starting to grow their own fruits and vegetables at home, to recycling and upcycling what they have. There are so many different ways in which we talk about sustainability, but this has emerged as the one unifying thread for all of our readers, where they're seriously interested in knowing about sustainable life choices and following them. So in a way, I mean, like if I look at it, the Better India has morphed into a really influential sustainability brand, and a voice in the space of changing mindsets and creating more awareness around issues related to and solutions related to the environment as such. So that really has been in a way a little bit of a surprising shift for us also. Like this was around 3 years ago that we started seeing this huge shift happening, where a lot of our sustainability content started seeing a lot of traction. And that's where we said, yeah, this is something that really not only excites us, but excites a large percentage of our readers as well, and we started going deeper into that space. And since then, a lot of our decisions have been driven by that audience, which really comes to us to learn about eco-friendly living and being more responsible citizens of the planet. So yeah, it's been that sort of a surprising change in some ways. So while we cover a lot of social change makers and all of that, but at the same time, when we talk about sustainability, it's definitely one of our largest categories and most popular one.
Interesting. And in closing, if you had to share your 2 cents or words of wisdom for would-be entrepreneurs and current entrepreneurs, what would that be?
I don't think I'm that wise, Krishna. But I would say that it's really important to understand and to make changes to your assumptions, as and when they come. Like a lot of times, entrepreneurs are too married to their ideas and too blinded by their passion to really see whether there's a real product market fit or not. I think that's been one very important learning for us, that you have to keep your eyes open and keep a feedback loop always open with your customers. We do that a lot with the Better India. We also do that a lot with the Better Home. In fact, we have customer reach outs. We actually speak to our customers every fortnight. And we get them together on a call. We have built a community where everyone talks to each other. So we are always in that constant feedback loop where we're learning a lot from our customers. And I think that's something that a lot of entrepreneurs neglect, or they might think that they know better. But I really do believe that if we had not understood or learned very quickly from the limitations of the marketplace and moved to the brand model, we would have been in a bad position now. So I think it's very, very important to learn, to not be stuck to an idea and actually evolve very quickly and keep learning from your or listening to your customers and learning from them.
Terrific. Anu, it has been fantastic and an engrossing discussion. I had a great time listening, and your passion is coming through with every response and whatever you've shared about your story. We know that this is one more. The COVID is going to be perhaps one of the smaller inflection points, and you are going to grow from here. Maharajas of Scale will be there to talk to this Maharani again of Scale again in the future when you've scaled a new peak. We wish you the very best. And anything else you would like to add in closing before we sign off?
It's been wonderful speaking to you, Krishna. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope to speak to you again in the future.
All right, Anu.
Take care.
We hope you enjoyed this story. If this story made a difference to you, tell us by leaving a comment on the website or our social media channels. Help us spread the love by subscribing, liking, and sharing our show. We welcome speaker suggestions and collaboration. Write to me at tanya@maharajasofscale.com.